I was willing to get better at whatever I did. But I remember playing hockey and practicing things that no one else would practice. So if I would go to the park when we had ice, like all the older kids would go home to dinner, I'd still there. I was up at 4:30. When it was a practice, I was up and I would wake my dad up. Like, Dad, we gotta go. You know what I mean? No one needed to ever push me for the next practice. You gotta be willing to do better than everyone around you every single day to have a chance to make it pro. But if you're not working harder, you won't last in the pro. And then you got to start your life again at 26.
My name is Randall Kaplan. I'm a serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and the host of In Search of Excellence, which I started to motivate and inspire us to achieve excellence in our lives. My guest today is my good friend, Luc Robitaille. Luc is an NHL Hall of Famer who, as a 19-year-old teenager, went from being drafted in the 9th round, 171st overall, to becoming the highest scoring left winger in NHL history with 668 goals over his 19-season career. In his first year in the league, Luc won the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, and then went on to become the only left wing in NHL history to record 8 consecutive 40-goal seasons. Luc played in 8 All-Star games, won a Stanley Cup as a player with the awesome Detroit Red Wings in 2002, and won 2 more Stanley Cups as an executive with the Los Angeles Kings. Luc, along with his wife Stacia, are actively involved in giving back to our community through their Echoes of Hope Foundation, which has helped thousands of at-risk and emancipated foster youth succeed by providing the resources, love, and support they deserve. Luc, it's a true pleasure to have you on my show. Welcome to In Search of Excellence.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see you.
Great to see you. You were born and raised in Montreal in a blue-collar family. Your dad, Claude, worked at a scrapyard and worked hard to eventually become an owner of 2 used car parts yards. And your mom, Madeline, was a stay-at-home mom. Can you tell us about the values they instilled in you as a kid? And as part of that, can you tell us about your dad's office in his Volkswagen and what the $200 to $300 it cost to send you to hockey school meant to him, and how both of your parents coming to every practice and every game helped you develop at a young age?
Yeah, it's funny. That's a great memory. It's great for me to think about that. I think the biggest thing is we didn't realize then that we didn't have a lot of money. We just didn't miss anything. We had a great life. For me as a kid, I just would go outside, and in the summer I'd play baseball, play lacrosse, and in the winter I played hockey. And whatever we needed, we seemed to have it. I think I remember later talking to my mom and her explaining to me she would do the grocery, and she'd get to Friday and she would run out of food, and then she'd have a little bit of oatmeal left and some bread, so she'd make for dinner oatmeal and toast. And we thought it was the greatest meal. She said, you guys would celebrate. She goes, I'd be crying in the back that we didn't have enough food. And it's kind of funny how that goes, but we appreciated the way our life was, and we never heard any complaint or anything like that. And I remember seeing my dad where he would work late at night. One of his things, in the middle of the winter, it was really cold, he would fix these windshield wipers motors of anything, and we'd have hundreds in the little cabanas, and he would fix them every night to make a little bit of extra money to help us. And it was probably just to help us in hockey, or me and my brother, or other things. And his first business that he was able to get, his first office was a Volkswagen car, and they had a phone book in it and a phone line in it.
Was it a car or one of those?
It was
buses?
One of those classic Volkswagen, and it was just parked in there, no tires. It was there. And then I think the next year he was all happy. They bought the back of a van, and that was the office. So that lasted maybe 10 years, where we would go there, and in the scrapyard, that's what I remember being 11, 12 years old, and we would drive. Some of the cars would start, so we'd drive them down the alley. We'd get in trouble when we'd hit another car because they were selling those parts. But funny enough, it was great memories, but we didn't realize that we really didn't have much, but we never seemed to miss anything.
You worked in the scrapyard when you were 13 to 6 years old, 16 years old during the summer. What was that like? How much were you making? What did you do with the money. And is that really a bunch of manual labor? And
It was mostly, for me, it was mostly manual. It was in the summer, and it was $150 a week, I remember. And then I would calculate, like, my whole thing was calculating like how much I could do when the canteen stopped by, which it would stop twice a day at 9:30 a.m. and it would stop at 1:30 after lunch. So I would try to get a little bit of cash to buy, like, it wasn't a coffee. It was maybe a drink and a donut in the morning, and then a bag of chips and a Coke at 1:30, and then would go to McDonald's or Burger King every lunch, and I had my money for the week, and the rest I try to save it because I want to buy a car when I turned 16. That was my big thing, and but it was mostly manual labor, and I remember I got upgraded at 13 or 14, where they would give me a card, and whenever. So the way the scrapyard works in that world is you buy as many cars as you can, but they're mostly smashed, and you sell the parts that are good to garage mostly. But when a car, they've sold most of the part, there's only 4, 5, or 10 parts left. They would bring them up the yard, and then they would give me the card of what they want to keep, my dad and his partner. Then I got to dismantle the whole car, the whole car, and keep just the good parts. But it was kind of fun when you're a kid because you could smash the windows. They don't want them. You could do whatever you want with it. But it was so that was my job for one summer. And then the next summer was my grandpa worked with my dad, and we had to build racks. And he was a welder. So my job was to hold everything for him. And I had a good eye on measuring. So before he would level it, he would ask me, and then he would tack it. But like I did learn like quickly that after a night that it rained, you don't put your 2 feet on the ground and hold the 2 posts this way. And he tacks it there. They would wake me up every day. But that was my job there. It was actually a great memory, but it was definitely manual labor.
I worked construction one summer before college. I dug ditches for the World Headquarters, Weight Watchers headquarters building on Telegraph Road in Michigan. I know you've been to Detroit a bunch of times. And I remember thinking, I had my shirt off. I thought, oh, it's this little scrawny kid. I'm with the guys. I made $6 an hour cash, and I'd come home filthy each day. I'd have to hose off my clothes before I went inside the house. But it taught me the value. I think the value of manual labor is very important for us. And it taught me also, I knew as I looked around, these were construction workers. They did this day in, day out for living. And I thought that was really cool. These were tough guys. They were all really nice, treated me well. But I also realized I definitely didn't want to do that. But it was a great lesson. Yeah,
it was hard when you see a lot of these guys. They go paycheck to paycheck, but you realize like how much it takes to work and to do it right. And with my grandpa, we had to do it right. It had to be very precise because there were racks to hold like front end of cars and doors, and they were a couple 100 yards long. So we got to make sure like it was done right to start.
Let's talk about your earliest memories playing hockey, which you were playing on the street in the schoolyards, not on the ice, but with a tennis ball. Can you tell us about cutting the seats of old cars using foam and rubber bands, why using worn tennis balls were better than new tennis balls, why you didn't step on cracks in the sidewalk, and how the local firemen helped you go from the streets to the ice?
Yeah, and that's those are great memories to have. But for us, like I said, we didn't have a lot of money, so like one tennis ball was gold, so you couldn't lose it. So we would chase it wherever. We couldn't afford to lose it. So the more you played with it, at some point, the fur on it like would wear out. So when that would wear out and it would lose a little bit of air, it didn't bounce as much. So it was more fun to play with that ball. And so that was the thing. Like as far as the tennis ball, but my dad being from the scrapyard, he would cut like seats that he wasn't going to sell. And inside of it, like on top of the springs, there was a cushion of air foam about, a couple inches thick. So he would bring him home. We would roll him in 2-3, and we'd throw a couple rubber bands. That was our goalie pads, and we'd have a hockey gloves and a mitt, and that's how you were a goalie. I actually loved to play goalie, so I was always wanted to be a goalie as a kid, but that was our equipment, and we just played all day in the schoolyard, but we made sure we didn't lose that ball because we didn't have two. So you made sure you chased it wherever it went. If you missed a shot and it went somewhere and you couldn't find it, we'd literally chase that ball.
What's the first memory you have holding a stick in your hand and actually taking the stick and getting out onto the ice?
I think the first memory I have is what you were talking about, the firemen, is in my neighborhood, like about a block from us, there was a park. And when it got to a point where it was really cold, the firemen would come at night and just hose off like an area that they had actually put little boards before, and then you'd wake up the next morning and it'd be ice, and it'd be ice for a couple of months. So
Because it's Canada and
yeah,
people played
it's
hockey.
Canada, and you played hockey, and in the park, every kid around the neighborhood would go there and play. For me, I was really young, so I would always play with older kids. So that was good for me from that standpoint. But it was a great experience just to be able to get out of bed, and we'd put our skates and then we'd literally walk on the cement all the way there. And I remember 5, 6 years old, like going there. I don't remember the first time I grabbed the hockey stick, but I remember the first time we were going to play hockey for real. I think I was 4, and my dad had bought my brother. My brother was a year older. My brother and I an equipment set, and we were so excited. And then the next morning when we were going to go, they got a call that the machine at the rink had broken down. So it took 3 days to fix it, and then we started again. And that was my first experience of playing for a team. But for some reason, I have that memory of being so excited in the morning and looking at my equipment and then being disappointed to not go. Then a few days later, I got to play. And from then on, I loved to play the game. But started as a defenseman, and it took a while for me to kind of get to the next level.
What were you like as a kid from the time you were 5 to 15 years old? And in terms of the hockey, when did you realize that you were better than most kids your own age? And
what was I like as a kid? I think as a kid, I didn't know then, but if you read the book, I think it's was it The Tipping Point, 10,000 Hours? I was willing to get better at whatever I did. I think school, I was okay, but I remember playing hockey and practicing things that no one else would practice. So if I would go to the park when we had ice, like all the older kids would go home to dinner, I'd still there. I was still playing more than the other one. I remember playing lacrosse, and I would go to the schoolyard and I would shoot the ball against the wall over and over and over again. Like I had seen someone switching hands, and I just had this mentality of just like it wasn't work. I was just trying to get better. I remember when the first pair of rollerblades came out, and I saw this one kid skating on the streets, and my dad knew the guy that was selling them, and we bought a pair of rollerblades. He said there was 2 kinds of wheels. He said there's the hard wheels that you'll go faster, and there's a softer wheels that you'll work harder. So I told my dad I want the softer wheel. It's funny, like my mentality at 12 or 13 was I want the harder work. So my mentality was I'll skate with these skates all the time, so it'll get me better on the ice. And I just I was always that way. Like I remember playing baseball and practicing over and over, putting like on the school wall like with some type of clay, like a target, and I was a pitcher, so I just kept throwing over and over again, and going to before every game to the batting cage, and you put a quarter and picking the hardest one that would throw I think 80 miles an hour, but we were kids, because I knew if I could hit a few going to play, the pitcher was probably pitching 65 miles an hour, so the ball would be this big. I just had all these things to get better every day that no one ever pushed me. It was just for some reason I was trying to get better at whatever I did.
You had a natural drive to succeed and be the best you can be, but were you born as a gift with hand-eye coordination? You watch these guys skating on the ice. They're skating as fast as they can. They've got all kinds of gear on them. They've got people checking them, and you're flying on the ice and putting these laser precision passes on someone else's stick.
Yeah.
And then you got to shoot it. I think hand-eye coordination, if you think about football, you need it. Basketball, you need it. But this is a whole nother level.
I think there's some the hand-eye coordination. I'm a big believer. That's something you can work on. I think I probably had it, but I worked on it every day. I mean, talking about when the tennis ball was brand new, I would go against the wall and play tennis with a hockey stick. It's kind of funny. Like when my friends were somewhere else on a Sunday, that's what I would do all afternoon. So there's some things that, sense of a game of where to be at the right time. That's hard to teach, whether it's football or the sense of like taking the pressure away and on a 3-2 call in the ninth inning when your team is down in baseball. And that's hard to teach because that's something inner that you're able to absorb the pressure. But things like hand-eye coordination and getting stronger and more powerful, you're born with something, but there's a lot of it. I think athletes can improve that, or anyone.
I want to talk about dreams that many of us have when we're kids, dreams to become professional athletes when we're older. And I want to start with some statistics. According to a Gallup poll in 2021, about 34% of kids ages 10 through 12 in the U.S. say they have a dream of becoming a professional athlete someday. Another survey from 2018 found that 61% of kids ages 6 through 17 have aspirations of becoming professional athletes. Other estimates suggest that playing in the NFL, NBA, MLB, or NHL is their dream career choice for 25 to 30% of kids in the United States. These dreams are awesome, but the dreams don't usually become reality. The reality is that less than 1% of high school athletes end up playing professional sports. Here are some specific stats about hockey. There are 32 teams in the NHL, and each team can have 23 players, which means that there are only 736 active NHL players at any one time. Before making it to the NHL, more than 95% of players have to play in junior hockey leagues first, usually for a couple of years, with guys like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid being the exception to the rule. What are the odds of playing junior hockey? They're significantly less than that. Only 1 in 625 hockey players make it to the junior leagues, which is 0.0016 or 0.16%. Of this number, well under 10% of players from top-tier junior leagues like the Canadian Hockey League or the United States Hockey League make it to the NHL. The number who make it to the NHL is under 1% for the lower-tier leagues. In other words, the odds of playing in the NHL are incredibly low. You weren't like most kids. When you were growing up, you didn't dream about making it to the NHL. Your dream was to play junior hockey. Can you tell us how that goal changed when a guy named Stefan Richter got hurt?
Yeah, it's funny, like my goal, because it goes back to what you can afford to go. So we couldn't afford to ever go see the Montreal Canadiens. So I think I saw one game growing up because it seemed so far away. It was so big.
How far away was it geographically from where you were?
It was downtown Montreal, so we were on the island, but it just seemed, to get to the NHL goal, like that wasn't even part of my thinking. And they won the Stanley Cup every year when I was, from the time I was 10 to 14, they won 4 years in a row. We thought that was normal. That's kind of funny. Like, they just win all the time. And
hard to do.
But yeah, it's really hard. Now I know. But it's interesting. Like, I wanted to play junior major because that was what we can afford to go watch. My dad and I, we would go watch every game locally, and Mario Lemieux played, and then we had other players that we knew. And I was hoping I would get a chance to go there, but I would think I lived more each moment. Like I remember being in Bantam. I'm like, I'm going to try to make Bantam AA, but I didn't think if I could make Bantam AA, I could play junior major or in the NHL. I was more trying to make that team, then be the best player on that team. And tomorrow I got to have the best game, and then tomorrow the best practice. And I was living moments to moment. And that's really how I think I looked at it this way. And it, like I said, I was always trying to get better, but it was never work. It's funny, like sometimes we talk about dreams or kids, and we see a lot of kids. We manage numerous hockey rinks here in Southern California, and sometimes I'll be there and the dad will come to me and they'll say, look at my son, like he's, what do you think? And then you look and the kid can really fly out there, and I'll be like, yeah, how old is he? Like 11. I go, how hard is it to wake him up to go to 6 a.m. practice? And if he says, it's really hard, that's really tough, I'm always like, just make sure he has fun. Because like I know I was up at 4:30. When it was a practice, I was up, and I would wake my dad up. Like, Dad, we got to go. You know what I mean? No one needed to ever push me for the next practice. It was just me. So if you have to be pushed to work harder at 12, even though you might be really good, you might make it pro, but you might not be happy because it's really, like you said, the percentage is so minimal. You got to be willing to do better than everyone around you every single day to have a chance to make it pro. It's hard.
And work harder than everybody.
Yeah, every single day. Even though you're better, you got to still work harder than everybody. Because you might make it pro if you're better than everybody, but if you're not working harder, you won't last in the pro. And then you got to start your life again at 26. You know what I mean? That's even harder.
So your dream changed. Stefan Richter gets hurt. Tell us what happened there.
So what happened is I was playing junior major, and I had my first year I get drafted, and then my second year I get cut from the LA Kings, and I had a really good year, led my team in scoring. And
this is when you were playing junior hockey.
This is junior hockey. And what happened is in the summer, there was one of the biggest tournament in junior hockey is the World Junior Championship. And to play for Team Canada was the ultimate dream. And so in the summer, I didn't get invited to the camp, even though I had like 150 points. They were inviting 40 players to make a team that would play during the holiday and Christmas. So they had a 1-week camp. And a day and a half before the camp, Pat Burns, that was my coach in junior, ended up coaching in the NHL. He's in the Hall of Fame. Called me. He says, "Are you in shape?" And I said, he said yes, no matter what. I was never going to say no. And yeah, and he says one of the guy from Quebec, the province, his name was Stéphane Richer, got invited to go to camp, and he hurt his shoulder and he can't go. He says they want one more guy from Quebec, and you're the guy. So do you want to go? I go, yeah, we'll go. So I flew to Toronto the next day. I didn't speak much English. And I remember sitting in that room, and there was a lot of first-round draft choice on that roster. And they made 2 teams, and we played 7 days in a row, 7 scrimmages, a couple practices along the way, 2 a day. But it was really about the scrimmages. And after the 7 games, I was leading the whole group in scoring. To kind of force them to invite me for the holiday. And I made the team, and that really changed my life. And the reason was that tournament was closer to the NHL. I still didn't know if I could make the NHL, but I knew my name was on the list at the time, and it was up to me. But playing for the World Junior Championship, the speed of the game was faster than my league. So when I came back in my league after playing in that tournament, it just seemed like everything slowed down even more. And I had probably the best second half in the history of my career for sure. I think we had like something like 50 or 60 games left, and I got like 130 points. I think I averaged like 3 points a game or something like
4
that.
points a game, to be exact.
Yeah, 4 points a game. Okay.
This episode of In Search of Excellence is brought to you by Sandy.com. SANDEE.com. We're a Yelp for beaches and have created the world's most comprehensive beach resource by cataloging more than 100 categories of information for every beach in the world, more than 100,000 beaches in 212 countries. Sandy.com provides beachgoers around the world with detailed, comprehensive, and easy-to-use information to help them plan their perfect beach getaway at home and abroad, and to make sure you're never disappointed by a beach visit again. Plan the perfect beach trip today by visiting sandy.com. That's www.sandee.com. The link is in our show notes. Stay sandy, my friends. So at this point, you're killing it. You're 18 years old, and then comes the NHL draft. And despite all of your incredible success, you were projected to be a late-round draft pick. I remember being at your retirement party at the Ritz-Carlton, Marina Del Rey. I was having for a hockey guy like me to see Mark Messier in the hallway and being able to say hello to him. And I remember Marty McSorley reading your scouting report and the effect it had on me and all the others in the room. The scout said you were too small, couldn't skate well, lacked hand-eye coordination. One of the scouts even said that you were slower than a Zamboni. The draft was at the Montreal Forum that year. You knew what the scouts were saying. You didn't really want to go there in person, but you went with your dad anyway. You got there at 10 a.m., and you had to sit there and listen as the players got called one by one. In the 4th round, the Kings drafted future Hall of Fame baseball player Tom Glavine, which is odd. You don't see a baseball player getting drafted into NHL too much. Finally, 100 picks later, in the 9th round at 7 p.m., after 9 hours of torture sitting there, they called your name as 171st pick. Take us through that night with your dad sitting in the nosebleed seats the khaki pants you were wearing, your interaction with the policeman, a guy named Alex Smart and John Wolfe, and the pin John gave you.
Yeah.
And what was the feeling inside of you at that exact moment when your name got called on the loudspeaker?
It's before that, it was kind of funny because time went and I had other teammates that were ranked higher than me. You know, like people rank you on, they rank a player on what the expectations are. Like they don't rank strictly on what you just did. You know, like scouts look at, okay, can he be in the NHL in 3 years? So I'm assuming every scout says they didn't know internally how much drive I had because it's impossible for them to know. They probably look at him, well, this guy can't skate. He won't be able to skate in 5 years, you know? And I think that's why I was ranked so low. But for me, I do remember in the third round, in the break and so forth, seeing some of my teammates and trying to talk them up because they were down. Let's say a guy was ranked in the second round, he didn't come out. So then because I was the leader of our team, I'd be like, don't worry about it, you'll be okay. And then one of my friends didn't come out to like the fifth round and he was down. So every round I was sitting or seeing him and go, don't worry about it, we'll be okay, you know. And so it's like it kind of made me forget about me, you know, like it was, in a way it was good. But I do recall every time LA came, I was nervous. I thought it was going to be me because that was the only team that talked to me the entire year before. And there was only one scout. His name was Alex Smart, like you said. And so every time I went to LA, I would go, oh, maybe that's it. And then it would go. And then in the eighth round, Rogi Vachon speaks French. So my even though everybody in the U.S. calls me Luc, in Quebec, they call me Luc. That's how you pronounce it. So Rogi goes to the stage, and he goes, and anybody that would know Rogi Vachon, he smoked a ton of cigars, so he was always coughing. So he'd be like, the LA Kings are happy to draft. And he goes, Luc. And I go, and this was the eighth round. And then a scout, someone from the LA Kings, go to the podium and said, no. And they give him another name. I never asked Rogi, but I do recall hearing my name. So they named another guy. His name was Shannon Deegan. I had played against, so that's how I remember the name. And then we went in a whole round, and in the ninth round, then he said my name. So I never asked Rogi about it, but I remember hearing my name, and I just jumped. I was so happy. And the old forum, there was like the bottom section was all red. The second section was white, and the third section, the 300, let's say, was blue. So I sat in the white because, you know, by that time there was no one left, you know, in the building. So I ran all the way down. It was very steep. And when I got to go on the ice, there was a policeman, and he blocked me. And I said, no, I just got drafted by the LA Kings. And so the policeman, he's looking at me. He's not believing that there's anyone left, you know. So Pierre Lacroix, that was a well-known agent at the time who became a GM for Colorado. He recognized me. He goes, hey, Luc. He goes, congratulations. And he told the policeman, he goes, it's okay. He just got drafted by the LA Kings. He goes, let him on. Let him go to the table. So he points me to where the table is. And I run to the table. And by the time I got there, for some reason, LA was either on a break or something. There was no one at the table. There was one man. His name was John Wolfe. And he was the assistant GM. So he goes, yeah, hello. Like I'm just standing there. Like I said, my English wasn't really good. So he goes, may I help you? I go, yeah, you drafted me? He goes, oh, really? He goes, what's your name? And I go, Luc Robitaille. And he looks at his list and he sees my name. He goes, congratulations, young man. He goes, welcome aboard. And then he looks and he pulls a box underneath the table. He goes, we don't have any hats or anything left. He goes, I can't give you any, but here you go. And he pulls out his pin from his jacket and gives it to me. And I remember I got that little pin. I was so proud, you know. And then he says, do you have an agent? I'll call you agent for training. I go, I don't have an agent, because my uncle, who kind of knew the GM of Montreal, Serge Savard, he says, should he have an agent? My Serge Savard says, you don't need to waste that money on an agent. Just if he ever gets drafted, I'll help you. I'll tell you what to do. So I said, I don't have an agent. He said, okay. And he gives me a piece of paper and a pencil. It wasn't a pen. And he says, write down your name and your address, and I'll send you the information for training camp. So I wrote down my name, the address, and then I shake his hand and I leave, and I go with my dad. We took the subway back home, and I remember I had my pin. I was so happy that I was on. My whole thinking as a kid then, I'm like, okay, I'm on the list. They have to look at me. For some reason, that's the way I thought. I'm on the list. they got to look at me. And now it's up to me, no one else. And that was my thinking going home. And I still got the pin, by the way, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I got it in my office. But that's kind of like, that's how it started for me. And going home, I remember we went to an ice cream shop, and this guy looks at me. He goes, you got drafted? I go, yeah. He goes, what round? I go, 9. He goes, oh, that'll never happen for you. But that was my thinking. Just as long as my name's on the list now, it's up to me.
So you get drafted, you play a couple of years in the minors. Kings wanted you to develop more. And then you're 20 years old when you finally make it to the bigs. Jimmy Carson came up with you. You guys moved to Los Angeles together. He's told me he's like a deer in the headlights out here. The guys are out there partying, going to nightclubs every night. They're drinking. You guys weren't doing that. People said, what was it like when you moved to LA? So talk to us about where you lived, English, who you drove to the stadium with, and then what you did for fun.
Well, we didn't do anything for fun. We played hockey. I think Jimmy Carson, myself, and there was Steve Duchesne. But Jimmy was really focused, like me, and our main goals, we were going there to play hockey. We weren't going there for anything else. So at the time, Marcel Dion was my roommate during training camp, and Dave Taylor, which they were 2 veterans, 2 all-star on the team. That was Jimmy Carson's roommate. And I remember
Dave was a 10th round pick, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. And I remember Marcel Dion asking me during camp, he goes, hey, if you make the team, kid, where do you want to live? What do you want to do? And I remember without a thought, just because I knew that was my focus, I said, well, I want to live in a boarding house. He said, really, why? I said, because I don't want to have to worry about anything. I just want to play, and I know it's going to be hard. Like I knew that for some reason. And I knew what I meant by that. Like, we were making $50 a week in junior major. And, I had opened 1 bank account in my life, like I had a car, but my dad had helped me. And that was it. There was no other worry about life. So I knew that coming to the U.S. was going to be a lot of stuff. And I wanted to just focus on hockey. So Marcel came to me, and I think he had talked to Dave Taylor and talked to a few people, and he said, why don't you come near the end of camp? He goes, why don't you come and stay in my house? He goes, you can help my kids to learn to speak French. And then he told Jimmy he had like a neighbor that he knew, this lady. So he asked her if Jimmy could stay there, and she said yes. And then he found another boarding house for Steve Duchesne. So all 3 of us stayed in a boarding house. So it was an easy transition. We went from staying in a hotel during training camp to go to his house where we had no worries. Okay, I think he was charging us $400 a month. It was like nothing. Food included, by the way. And so
his wife's a good cook, I heard.
Yeah, she's a great cook. Carol is a great cook.
She cooked some good meals.
So it really made our life easy, where we would just focus on hockey. And he lived in Palos Verdes, so we never got out of that bubble until Christmas. So we started in September. I never went anywhere. And we went to the practice, the games. Once in a while, we'd go to dinner with Marcel somewhere, and that was it. And we just slept all the time. As it turned out, his kids helped me to learn to speak English. I didn't help the poor kids speak French at all. But we got along really good. But that really helped our transition. But Marcel told me he had asked those questions to many draft picks for the Kings over the years, and every one of them would be like, I want to live in Hollywood. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy the city. That was always their answer. And we were the first one to say, I want to play hockey. So I don't want to be focused on anything else but just that. And that's why he took it upon himself to help us.
I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we jump back in, I want to know if you've ever thought about what you need to do to reach the next level of success in your life. Over the last 25 years, I've been an advisor to more than 50 companies. I've invested nearly 100, including Google, Lyft, and Seagate. And I also co-founded a company that today is worth more than $15 billion. I've been incredibly blessed in my journey, and at this stage in my life, I want to give back. I want to share the lessons I've learned so you can reach incredible success way faster than I did. In my own journey, I've learned that having the right mentor is is a massive advantage to achieving our goals. I'm hugely passionate about mentoring others, and I'm looking for a few hungry entrepreneurs who are excited to take action on their journey to incredible future success. So if that's you, I've got an opportunity. In the description of this video, there's a link where you can apply to work with me. All you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and if you're a good fit, my team will reach out so we can build a game plan together. All right, now let's get back to the video.
And Marcel, for those viewers and listeners who don't know, Marcel was a big deal. I mean, for you to drive with him,
he's one of the greatest player of all time.
Yeah.
700 plus goals. He was a superstar in LA. He was a superstar in Detroit. I mean, he's just one of the greatest players to ever play the game.
And you're living with him and you're driving with him to the game. So was he? I mean, that must have been so inspirational just to spend all that time with him.
Well, he had a Mercedes. I'd never been in a Mercedes, so it was kind of fun to drive there to practice in a Mercedes. Actually, that's all my nickname over the years was Lucky. And but we had a player that year. His name was Morris Lukowicz, and guys would call me Luke. So whenever they'd be in the locker room for the first couple games, someone would say Luke, would both turn around. So Tiger Williams, that was a revered tough guy in the NHL, and I had heard he didn't like French guys, so I was really nervous around him. But I think he got to liking me or something. I had beaten him in a push-up test in the training camp, so he was very surprised by that. And he come in after game 2, and he had a kind of a funny way to talk. His nose was broken like 17 times probably, and he started calling me, "Hey, Lucky, hey, Lucky." And the guys were like, "Well, why are you calling him Lucky?" And I remember he says, "Well, he scored on his first shot and his first shift on the ice. Like I scored, I jumped on the ice in the NHL, and my first shot on goal, I scored. And it was like 3 minutes to the game, it was my first shift. And so he says, and then he says, he drives to practice in a Mercedes, the nicest car, and because it was driving Marcel Dion, and he goes, and he lives in the biggest house. Marcel, he goes, "That's lucky to me." So then all the guys got into calling me Lucky the rest of my career. It just stayed.
That's amazing. What was the feeling as you're sitting on that bed? You're in the locker room. It's your first game. You make the team, and you're sitting there, and are you just out of your mind, anxious, or is it more excitement? And then what? You touch the puck for the first time, you got it, you wind up, you flick it in, and you see the red light going on. I mean, what were you feeling at that moment?
I think there's a few fold. Like that day when I knew I made the team and I stepped on the ice for the practice, I think it might have been the day before. I remember looking up going, this is my team. I'm going to make a difference there. Because there's a challenge too. Like I remember going to Hall, my junior team, they had never been past the first round when I got there. And I remember thinking, okay, we're going to make a difference here. And we ended up winning the championship 3 years later. And I remember in my mind, that was my goal. You have individual goals, but I wanted my team to make a dent, to change the culture of that franchise. And we did. And that franchise won to have success for the next 30 years, but we started it. So I remember getting to LA and saying, I want to make a dent. I want it. This team has never won. I want to be part of this. That was my thinking. So then you go to that first game, and now suddenly becomes the moment. And I'm dressing, and I'm like flying, in the warm-up. I'm like, you're so light. The adrenaline is going. And then what happened is when we started the game, Bernie Nichols, it was like a really good center. Marcel was 35, 36 at the time. He was near the tail end of his career, so he was made technically a second-line center. And Jimmy was playing with Dave Taylor on a third line. So the coach started with Bernie Nichols' lines, and I was playing with Marcel. And they stayed for a minute. Then he went with Jimmy Carson with Dave Taylor's line. And then he went with the other line. I think the fourth line was more of a checking line. And he put him on, and I'm like on the bench, and my legs are, and I remember Marcel Dion kind of grabbed my leg. He goes, "Hold on, kids. We're going to be there. We're going to get going. We're going to get going." And as he went on the ice, Marcel went, he took the center, and the left winger that had the puck in our zone got to the red line, dumped it in, and it went behind the net. And the goalie went behind the net, and then the left winger came, and I jumped. I jumped. I didn't feel anything. Even though they said I wasn't scared, I know I was flying. And the goalie made a mistake. I saw from the red line that the goalie made a mistake. He rimmed it around, and I could see Marcel was going. So I sprinted as fast as I could to the front of the net, and typical my type of goal, I yell in French as much as I could. I go, Marcel, because that's how you pronounce it in French. I go, Marcel! And he kind of looked up, and Marcel had a big kind of curve, and he had great hand. He grabbed the puck almost without stopping, and he just swooped it towards me, and the goalie wasn't there. He was still behind the net. I just tipped it in the empty net, and there's a clip somewhere where you see me jump, and I'm like so excited. That was it. I went from the bench to the front of the net, tipped it in. That was like, it took like 3 seconds. That was my first shift.
If only it was that easy.
I know, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the dream came true. Do you still have the puck?
Yeah. Funny enough, I had given it to a friend that had a museum in Newport Beach, and when he passed away, his wife sent it back to me. Yeah,
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're 20 years old at this point, and the guy who the experts said was too slow and lacked hand-eye coordination ends up that year with 45 goals and 39 assists, 84 points, and you win the Calder Memorial Trophy for the Rookie of the Year, which is a little factoid, is named after Frank Calder, the first president of the league, and which has been awarded since the 1936-1937 season. From the 171st pick, the Rookie of the Year, on a scale of 1 to 1,000, how fucking good did that feel?
How good did that feel? I remember I didn't think I was going to win, like the Rookie of the Year, because I went to the awards, and Ron Hextall and Jimmy Carson were the other two that were nominated. And Ron Hextall, I had seen that, got nominated to be on the first All-Star team. So I was on the second All-Star team for the whole year as a left winger. So, yeah, and I was a rookie, but that's the whole All-Star team. And so when I saw he was on the first All-Star team, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to win tonight. It doesn't make sense. So I was really relaxed at the award, and then they named me. I was kind of working on a speech, but I stopped because I'm like, I'm not going to win. And then they named my name. I'm not sure I felt good. It was more like it happened. I was overwhelmed by it, and then I moved on. I think I was always in my career moving on to the next thing. So, okay, I got to get better. I got to get a little faster. I got to work on it. I think later in life, you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. I won it. But I didn't really stop it at the time and think, okay, I showed everyone. I wasn't about that. I still had that fear. I better be good or I'm not going to be here.
Your rookie year, you played with another incredible rookie, my good friend Jimmy Carson, one of your closest friends as well, who was one of the first guests on my podcast and who introduced us 20 years ago. Like you, he was a superstar from the second he stepped on the ice. He scored 79 points his first season. You guys were both new to LA, lived next door to each other, drove with Marcel to games, became great friends, and future hockey stars together. I think chemistry is underrated as a part of our success. How well we get along with others and bond with them in both our personal lives and our professional lives. You guys had that special bond.
Yep.
Can you tell us about the importance and strategy about staying close to the middle of the bench during the games?
Yeah.
And also, as part of that, what it meant when you guys were on the ice and one of you yelled Mario to the other person.
So we were really good. It's kind of funny. We were totally different background. Like Jimmy, his dad was a very successful businessman. He was a tax man. I can't remember, but Jimmy was aware of different things. He was reading different things than me, so I was very intrigued. He was teaching me a lot. He was 2 years younger than me and way smarter. And but the one thing we share a bond on the ice to get better, and we would practice constantly. It wasn't something that we push each other to practice. We just did it. It was fun. We were kids. We constantly, whenever we was off the ice, we would still be practicing shots and everything. Then our second year in the summer, in September, there was the World Cup of Hockey. It was called Canada Cup at the time. And Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, played together. And Wayne led the tournament in scoring, and Mario had the most goals. And they had a way to do a 2-on-1 where Wayne would kind of wade off of it a little bit, and Mario would just kind of turn the other way, and one time it, and kind of wait long enough for the goalie not to go. So him and I would pick that up. We're like, I think we're probably both thinking we're not as good as these guys, but we could do that, you know. So we started practicing it. So in game, when we would end up on a kind of an outnumbered chance, we would just yell Mary. We'd know we'd both flip-flop on our offhand, and whoever had the puck would wait, and then the other guy would, instead of crashing the net or doing the thing, we would literally wait, and then there was a time for some unknown reason when the defenseman's stick would change, so the lane would become open, and we must have scored 15 or 20 goals together that year with that trick that we would literally yell at each other, Mario, and that was our signal.
What about not moving to the end of the bench, just hang out in the middle?
Yeah,
of the bench?
we would hang
what was
out.
that about?
We would hang out in the middle of the bench so the coach would see us, because we always want to get back on the ice. So
he told me that you made him do that.
Oh,
and that
yeah,
was your strategy.
because Jimmy would sit at the end of the bench, and what happens is there's 4 lines in hockey, and you go every minute, but coaches get caught up. There's a penalty, there's a power play, and they shift guys, and so you better be really good to be at the end of the bench so the coach is looking for you. That was my thinking. So I was like, let's stay in the middle of the bench so he sees us. So the longer you're there, he's gonna. It's close. It's easy for him to tap you. When he taps you in the back, you just jump. So I'd be like, Jimmy, let's stay in the middle of the bench. So like we might get an extra shift every game. That was my idea. And he would just look at me like, you're nuts. I'm like, yeah, I am. we might score goals during that extra shift.
And it worked.
It did. It worked. Like the coach would just, like he'd see us, we were going on a good game, and we were always in the middle of the bench. So he would just tap our back and we'd go.
Your third year in the league, Bruce McNall, who owned the Kings, is a good friend of both of ours, incredible guy who's done some bad things. But, you know, some people have a lot of people we know have done some bad things. For those people who don't know, he had a movie studio, went bad. He owned a stamp and coin company. There was a chance he was going to go bankrupt, so he created fake invoices with the stamps and the coin, borrowed against that, had negotiated a deal with Sony to buy the team. It was 2 days away from closing, and an accountant found the mistake, and Bruce ended up going to jail. But everyone loved him. Yeah. And he brought hockey to LA like it had never been before. In 1993, it was your third year, he brought Wayne Gretzky to the Kings. Jimmy was the star player in that trade. Interesting enough, Jimmy had a better year in Edmonton than Wayne had here. He had 55 goals that season. Wayne was a hockey god in Canada, the best player to live. And even at the time, Brian Mulroney, the Prime Minister of Canada, had tried to stop the trade. Yeah. So tell me what it was like playing with Wayne Gretzky, how that influenced your life and career, and what did he tell you that one time when you waited a little too long to pass the puck?
I think for me, like Wayne Gretzky growing up, even though I scored a lot of goals and I learned to score goals, my career went, I really pride myself on being a playmaker. And it had everything to do from the first time I saw Wayne. I think I was 12 or 13 years old, and I saw Wayne. So he was about 6 years older than me, I think.
You saw him live or you saw him on TV?
I saw him on TV, and I was floored. Like, I had never seen a player play like that. I couldn't believe it. And then from then on, it was like anything I could see or learn about Gretzky, I tried to learn. And I remember as a kid, like I had posters of Gretzky on my wall, you know, and, you know, like if Edmonton would play, it was a 9 p.m. game. It was really late. And I'd sneak somewhere, and then my dad would be watching. And he didn't see me on the corner of the hallway trying to watch this game. But it was everything around my life was trying to be like Gretzky. So that was truly my hero. And so when he got traded to the Kings, and that was in 1988, I was so excited. I hadn't met him a couple of times because he owned our junior team. But I was like, when you meet your hero, you're like, hey, sir, how are you? And that was it, you know. But I watched everything I can. I remember my first couple of years in the NHL when I would play against Edmonton. This was my Super Bowl. You know, it was like, because I wanted to impress Wayne Gretzky more. I'm not even sure I was thinking about winning. I just want to impress Wayne Gretzky. But I do recall my first year, he missed a play, and he skated by our bench, and in his breath, he goes, fuck. And I'm like, like I couldn't believe he was swearing. Like, this is how much, when you see your idol, you think everything you do is perfect. And so I remember being floored. So when he came to the Kings, it was difficult for me because he was my idol. So like I would look up to him and it didn't seem real. So like from that, I think the first year, it took me maybe 2 years to start saying, okay, wait a minute, he's just a human being like me. He's just normal, even though he's the greatest player to ever play the game. But what happened is I started playing with him, and because I had kind of tried to do my game after him, I was trying to do the same play as him, the same passes as him. Like even when Jimmy was scoring goals, I was priding myself on being a playmaker. And so one game, I'm on the ice, we get a 2-on-1, and the real play is you play with Wayne Gretzky, the greatest playmaker in the history of the game. You give him the puck. But instead, I held on, and I was going to do a Wayne Gretzky play. So I waited, and I made the pass, and it got caught in the air by the defenseman. So when we got back to the bench, Wayne is just, like you talk with players all the time. He goes, hey, Lucky, he goes, give it to me right away. And he goes, I'll give it back to you. Don't worry. I'm like, okay. Like it wasn't a teammate to me. It was my hero. So then for the next, I think, 10 games, I was so nervous. Every time I got the puck, all I would do is throw it at him. Like it was like, here it is. And I clearly remember our coach after a bunch of games, he says, I'm going to take you off of Wayne's line because he says, you're not playing your game anymore. It's hurting us. It's hurting the team. It's hurting you. And in a way, I was so nervous to please him that it kind of felt a little bit of a relief at the time. A couple of years later, I was like, okay, now I know how to play with him and everything. But it did take me a couple of years.
Did he make you a better player and also a better person? And how? Yeah,
well, he made me a better player because I watched. Like I always knew I wasn't the best skater. I wasn't the strongest. So I had to be a student of the game. And I watched every player that would play well during the season, or every player that I thought was really good. I watched them, and then I would say, okay, these 10 things he's doing I can't do, but that one thing I can replicate that. So then I would practice that. Like I would watch Mike Bossy, and I read his book, and he said whenever he struggled, he shot 5-0. Because if you shoot 5-0 in hockey, you can't miss the net. If you pick the corner,
what does that
miss.
mean to people who don't know?
So you shoot between the legs. So if the goalie's standing there and you shoot between the legs, that means he's in the net. You're going to get a shot on net.
Right, but I mean, we're talking about that much room where the puck barely
There's
goes
not
through
a lot
the
of room,
goalie path.
but if you aim there and you hit it, you're going to score. But if you don't, there's going to be a rebound. It's going to hit someone, and you keep getting shots on net. And the theory is if you miss the net, Gretzky said, 100% of the shot, you don't miss the net or you don't take, you're never going to score. But if you hit the net, it gives you a chance. And when you're a point getter in sports, if you get a cheap point where it might be a rebound, it goes in, it kind of boosts you up and it makes it. So that was an example I got from Michael Bossy. But watching me, Wayne, every day, I would watch all the little detail the game he was doing. And there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, he's doing this. I could do that. So I would practice that over and over again. His way to shoot, the way he would read the ice, the way he would go on a spot where no one goes. And I started doing some of the stuff he was doing. And as a person, he was the ultimate teammate. No matter what, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe, Magic, their world is so big. It's very hard for people to understand how these people, they have no life. Like everybody looks up to them. It's really hard. The greatest businessman in the world will meet Michael Jordan. It's Michael Jordan. It's a whole different world. And Wayne was like that. And but what I appreciate about Wayne is he just want to be a teammate. He didn't care he understood he had to help promote the game, and he was always on. He never said a dumb quote. He never spoke out of line. But when no one was around, he just wanted to go to dinner with the boys. He wanted to be a teammate. And that's where we grew up, though. Like playing with Edmonton, they were a bunch of young guys, and he knew that's what it took to win. So that was fun for me to see and to enjoy that part.
I didn't know Wayne when he was playing. Obviously, I'm a huge fan, Red Wing fan. He used to kill me when he would beat
He
us.
used to kill the Red Wings.
And,
that was
big
like
time. Big time.
Gordie Howe was his player, so the Red Wings, he
Yeah.
always was up for them.
Yeah, I know him now. He's my next door neighbor in Coeur d'Alene, and it's interesting because he's just a regular guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just walking around, and there's a lot of interesting people there, some well-known people, and then people like me, and most people just have no fame at all,
Yeah.
regular people, and he's just one of the guys, and that's how I know him. Just not even one of the guys. He's just a human being. Walks around in shorts and flip-flops, and people are not fawning all over him. And it's as a person, you don't think about, if you're not famous or a superstar, the most famous person in the world, but like, you can't go out to dinner.
Yeah.
Now he can go to dinner, but Tom Brady can't go to dinner. None of these superstars can go because it's too much. Like you said, they don't have a life.
Well, it's people talk to you differently, I think like Wayne's, he just wants to be a normal person. He's just happy to be the greatest player to ever play the game,
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, when you're an athlete, you still even watching Tom Brady from afar, not knowing him, he loves to be with his teammate. Part of the inside that locker room, that's a special world for any of us, and these guys don't get that when they go outside. It's very hard for them to see. So I know Wayne as an example, when he gets around a few of players and they're having beers, telling stories, he just lights up. He just he's got the best stories, and he just loves that part,
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I've had a few drinks with he and Janet before, and it's fun for me.
Yeah. It is awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Stanley Cup. If you're listening or watching and don't know much about hockey, winning the Stanley Cup means you've won the championship. It's their version of winning the Super Bowl. Of the 10,000 plus NHL players who have competed over the last 50 plus years, about 75 to 80% have never won a Stanley Cup. You've won it once as a player in 2002 with the awesome Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
And then, which had 10 Hall of Famers on the team.
Yeah.
And you've won it twice as a president of the Los Angeles Kings. In 2000, let's redo that. Let me redo it when we're done. We need to redo it now. Okay. Perfect. The 10,000 plus National Hockey League players who have competed over the last 50 plus years, about 75 to 80% have never won a Stanley Cup. You've won it once as a player in 2002 with the awesome Detroit Red Wings, my favorite team, as you know, which had 10 Hall of Famers on the team, and is one of the best teams probably ever in history of the league. And twice as an executive with the Los Angeles Kings in 2012 and 2014. Can you tell us about the saying, if you can't beat them, join them, and how you had a different take on that when you were 35 years old, 16 years after you had been in the league? And what was your exact feeling at that exact moment when that final horn sounded, you became a Stanley Cup champion and lift that trophy on the top of your head?
Well, first of all, it was the greatest feeling ever, because we went, when I was with the King, we went to the final in 1993. And I clearly remember looking at Rob Blake, that was a young player on my team, and said, we'll be back next year. Then the Kings didn't make the playoffs for 5 years. A year later, I got traded. Life just changed, and it's a hard trophy to win, and takes everything going the right way and so forth. So when I went to Detroit, I clearly remember the summer before, we had beaten Detroit in the playoff before, and I was a free agent. And
Badly, you had beaten them.
Yeah, well, we were down to nothing. We ended up winning the series, but I became a free agent. I didn't know what I was going to become a free agent. I thought I was going to sign in LA, and I didn't know at the time. You don't know behind the scene. I thought they were screwing me, but that was not it. They had budget, and they had to go by it, and so looking at teams, I remember my kids were already registered in the school, so I thought, I got to stay on the West Coast. And my wife looks at me and she goes, well, who do you think has the best chance to win the Cup next year? And I go, Detroit. She goes, well, you guys just beat them. I go, yeah, but they had just signed or made a trade for Dominic Hasek, and I knew how good they were. So she goes, well, why don't you try to go there? I go, really? I go, but it's far, because I knew my wife was going to stay in LA. She goes, it doesn't matter whether you're in San Jose or Dallas or or Detroit, you're still going to be playing hockey all the time. And so I said, okay, my agent called Ken Holland, was the GM in Detroit, and he told them I was interested in going. And I think they thought I was already signing in LA at the time, and took maybe an hour or so, and then we ended up making a deal, and I ended up going there. And going there, I knew I was really excited because it was going to be one of the greatest team. And then about 3 weeks later, we signed Brett Hall.
Right.
He wasn't signed at the time. So coming on that team, there's a lot I learned because I was always, one of the guys counted on to score goals. Now you go on a team, there's like 10 guys counted on. So you understand to be successful, like any business, you're going to have a leader, but it takes everyone to be on board to sacrifice a little bit to win. And that team, we had 10, like you said, 10 Hall of Fame, plus Scotty Bowman, our coach, was a Hall of Famer too. So I think the biggest thing that I learned is, because funny enough, I ended up playing a role on that team that was a lower role than anything I had, but I won. So I'm like, and I learned a lot that everybody's counted upon, at different times. And that made me a better person, a better leader. And then, winning the cup, though, for me, like, I didn't know we were going to win, but sure, the expectations were very high. But I clearly remember when I won, I was like, 16 fucking years. I was so happy that I knew my name was going to be in the cup. My family name was going to be on the Stanley Cup. And that just meant everything.
You're just watching that clock winding down, 3 minutes, 2:59, 2:58. And then, but what'd you feel when you stepped onto that ice? Everyone raise a hand. I've seen, they always do it. They throw their gloves, they throw their helmets, and you guys are all running in there, and you touch the cup. It's above your head. What were you feeling?
Right before that, you said I was looking at the clock. When I was about 3 minutes left in the game, and what happened is I improved my defensive game. Like, we had other guys that would score goals, and I became a more responsible player to win. So at about 2.5, 3 minutes left in the game, Scotty Bowman named my line to go, and we were up 2-1. We were going to win the cup. But I remember I went out there. I was so pumped, but I was not going to screw it up for us. Like, there's not a chance. I was not going to take one chance, And I remember I forechecked, and I got the puck. I dumped it in. I went and forechecked again. And Brendan Chan laughed so hard because something happened where I got caught on the ice. There was like a bad change, and I ended up staying too long, but I couldn't come to the bench because if you come to the bench, it leaves a hole. So, and Brandon was taking me, was playing left wing, and finally we were able to get the puck and dump it in, and I turned around and I was going to sprint to the bench because I wanted him to jump. You want to win. And Shanny, he still tells the story how I toe picked like twice, and I went head first. He said he's looking at it. He's literally laughing at me because he knows how much I want to change, and he still laughs about that. Like, he couldn't believe how much I want to get back to the bench. Then he stepped on the ice and he scored to make it 3-1 with the empty net. We ended up winning, but so that was kind of a funny moment of looking at the clock countdown. But when we won and Stevie Eisenman had the cup, and I think I was the second one they gave it to. They gave it to Dominic Hasek, then me. Yeah. And it was to lift it up in the air. I think it's 33 pounds, and it feels like it's nothing. And it's hard to describe that feeling because it's like, for that moment, you've achieved everything. Like, you're a kid, you're not even thinking to play in the NHL. You see Montreal Canadiens, you see that trophy, and and then finally you do it. There was such I'm not sure if it's a relief or just a total like happiness of everything that you work for. It finally paid off.
Are you looking for your next great gift to surprise a friend, colleague, or loved one? Bliss Beaches makes the perfect gift. This best-selling bright and beautiful coffee table book by Randall Kaplan features stunning drone photography from exotic beach locations around the world. It's the perfect housewarming gift, a great addition to any home or office, and a fun and creative alternative to bringing a bottle of wine to somebody's house for dinner. Bliss Beaches is available for purchase on Amazon, where it has glowing reviews and a 5-star rating. Get your next amazing gift and order a copy of Bliss Beaches by clicking the link in our show notes. So each player on the team, the coaches, people on the staff get the cup for a few days a year. The cup travels with the guy from
Yeah.
the league who wears a jacket and tie,
Yeah.
and he's with the cup at all
Yeah.
time. He's not gonna leave it with you, to you do whatever. You had a party at your house.
Yep.
And it was really fun to be there. You had a truck with food.
Yeah.
In and out truck.
Yeah.
Which was
I got in and out. I
spectacular.
got California Pizza Kitchen too,
You
and
got CPK there, and
I can't remember the donut company. Anyway, I had the whole California theme.
It was a great party,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fun to celebrate you. First of all, I'm just happy you won it with the Wings.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, obviously, I'm from Detroit, but what was interesting to me is you gave away a lot of your best memorabilia that night, and it was a raffle, and I was just like, God, my 55, call my number. And I didn't get me. You gave away your World Cup jersey, your all your winning jerseys. Why did you do that? Why didn't you keep all that stuff?
You know what it was? Like that year, I had never done that in my career. That year when we started the playoffs, I started acquiring stuff in Detroit. Like I would grab pucks after games, and I would grab pucks on the ice. I kept sticks, and I would write down which game. I just would. Everything that I could think. Every round we'd win. Like I'd win. I kept stuff coming back. I just had it, and at some point I remember thinking, well, if I win, we'll do a party and we'll be part of it. So, the party started. I remember thinking, we'll invite all my friends from LA who've never seen the Cup, like all the real hockey fans. So we thought we'd get 200 people in our backyard, and I think we ended up at 400 or 500 people. It was like ridiculous. We had to cover the pool. We did the, we had a little roller rink. So my wife's really good at throwing parties. She said, we got to have a theme. So we did like a poker night. So I said, I know what we're going to do. Like whomever, we won't tell anybody, but if they win, they're going to get tickets, and whomever wins the most trip will have more tickets. And we'll draw like stuff that I accumulated during the playoffs and throughout my career. And because I knew all the people that were there were people that they shared the love of the game. Yeah. And that was the idea. So we kind of made it fun in that way. And some of the stuff was really cool. I had a jersey signed by the whole team, the Stanley Cup winning team. Yeah. I had a lot of stuff like that.
You gave that one away or no?
Yeah, I gave that one away. Yeah, you didn't get it.
No, fuck.
But yeah, we. So that was the idea behind that. Yeah.
So, a highlight for me that night was taking a picture with a cup.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I still have the picture. Look at the picture, and it's super fun. John Cooper is also a neighbor in Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. Great guy. And I go back and forth. During the summer, I have to work. I have my internship program, but Maston's up there for the summer. It's during the middle of COVID. He's won now as a coach 2 times in a row, back to back, which is very hard to do. And all I know is I get the call on a Wednesday night when I'm not there. Coop has the cup. We're all going to the clubhouse, and we're all going to party and drink from the cup. And literally, they filled it with alcohol and punch in these big straws, and I'm jealous. I'm taking it out on my wife. Like, I want to be there or whatever. And then I'm like, you're drinking out of a straw with 100 other people there during the middle of COVID. It's like, yeah, everyone's doing it.
Who cares?
We're drinking from the cup. But and then I'm hoping, okay, third year, I made it to the finals one more time, and didn't get it. So I've yet to drink from the cup. So hopefully one of these days I'll know someone. I'll be at the right place at the right time. But let's talk about going back to the draft. And I want to give you a statistic that you probably don't know. And we already talked about this before a little bit. If you're drafted in the 9th round, the odds are against you. Only 2.3% of 9th round draft picks go on to play in the league. For the 2.3% of 9-rounders who make it, the average career lasts 3.6 years. Through all your hard work and immense talent, fuck the scouts. You played 19 seasons and retired as one of the greatest players ever to lace up the skates. 2 years after retired, you were inducted into NHL Hall of Fame at 43 years old, the second youngest player ever to make it. I watched your speech 2 nights ago. It was awesome. It's been a few years since you probably gave it, but do you remember how you ended it? And what did it feel like to watch your parents crying in the audience?
Well, it was emotional. I do I can't remember the exact word, but I do remember because someone actually gave me a poster, me and they wrote it. But it was like a message to all the kids that people don't believe in you. You know, it's all the ninth rounder out there. You know, believe in yourself. And I can't remember.
Do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah, go ahead, read it to me.
Go back up.
Then I'll come back.
Okay.
It's in my house, and I should know it, but I don't stop and look at my picture.
Keep going up, right there. Okay. Keep going up. It's the one before. So it said, "Here is the light that shines on a ninth round. Here's the light that shines on a ninth. Here's the light that shines on a ninth round draft pick of the world who are too slow, who can't skate, don't have a chance of making it, and compels them to achieve greatness anyway. This applies to all of us and all of the kids around the world. Be a light, follow your dreams. Anything's possible."
Yeah. Yeah, it actually came from our foundation. There was some of the kids at Echoes of Hope at the time. They had written something about being a light, and that's how this came about. Actually, to be honest, my wife helped me write that, but that's really what it meant. That was the message. Yeah.
Then looking at your parents.
Looking at my parents was overwhelming because you go through it, and when you don't play to get in the Hall of Fame, you know, but
you knew at that point you were getting into the Hall of Fame.
You know, because you got the call and everything. But when you're there that night, and I look down at my parents, and then it goes in your mind all the sacrifice they did. You know, like every one of us that's had success had someone to help us. No one could do it alone. You do it alone. You do the work alone, but there's always someone there. And my dad never was hard on me, you know, from that standpoint. He was a hard man, you know, at home. Sometimes he was impatient, but never with hockey. He just drove. He was at every game, never criticized my game. He just said, keep working hard, keep working hard. I think one time he questioned my game. It was one time in my whole life. But he never said anything. And then, you know, when you're there in the Hall of Fame, you're like, wow, you know, because then by that time I realized, you know, how our life was and so forth. So it was, I could tell it meant the world to them. And then that was, from that standpoint, it was pretty overwhelming.
Roll up for a second because I want to see it. No, down for a second, the other way. So many people look at the odds of doing something so difficult, right? I can't do that. I can't win an Academy Award. I can't play professional sports. I can't climb Mount Everest. They're very hard to do. What's your message to everyone out there in personal life and their business life who are looking at something, they don't do it, the odds are too small, and they fear of failing?
I think fear of failing sometimes makes you great. I remember hearing Bill Gates as his fear of failure, like what made him great every day. But it's what you do with it. It's like they say about courage. It's like in our game, it's really hard to block a shot. It's come 100 miles an hour. You know it's going to hurt. Guys still dive in front of it all the time. And that's courage. You know it's going to hurt. You know you're going to get hurt, but you're trying to win the game. You're going to block a shot. Now, you could take that into going to war, and you know, you're taking a bullet for some reason to help your country. That's the same idea. You know you might die, but you still do it. And I think when someone is scared or is questioning something, if you're willing to push yourself, you're gonna have success. You know, it's what you do when you're against the cliff. What do you do when things are hard? What do you do when no one's looking? If you do something when no one's looking and you're trying to get better at it, first of all, you're picking the right thing. Because if you're only doing it when people are watching you, you probably got the wrong job or the wrong thing. It's like a great doctor. They try to get better all the time. If you're a heart surgeon, you're trying, even though you might be the best surgeon in the world, you're probably trying to learn all the time. That's what makes you the best. And that would be the same. To have any success, you got to try to do what other people are not willing to do, especially when no one's looking.
So one of the elements of my success has always been something I call extreme preparation. It's something I teach. It's something that I coach. when someone prepares 1 hour for something, I may do 10, 20, or sometimes even 30. I'm always the most prepared guy who walks into the room. Can you talked about a little bit studying players, even though you were great, all-star. You've talked about waking up at 4:30 in the morning. Can you give some other examples of how extreme preparation was important to your success?
Extreme preparation is everything. I mean, I remember to give you an example, we sometimes people will talk about our sport where we play 82 games a year, and they're like, oh, you might get tired and everything, and I'm always like, well, wait a minute, you only have to rest for 82 nights. That's it. You still got 260 or whatever, 280 nights. You can do whatever you want, but those 82 nights, you make sure you go to bed at 9 o'clock. Make sure the day before you have the proper meal. Like I would have I never said no. People will always say, Luc never says no. He signed autograph. He's there for fun. But what people don't know is from the time I had to practice, let's say on a Wednesday and we played Thursday, I was regiment. I went to practice. If I was tired, I practiced a certain way. If I felt good, I practiced a certain way. Then when I started learning about working out with weights, I would do my weight program. I ate a certain meal at 1 o'clock after. If in the afternoon I wasn't sure what to do because I didn't want to sleep, I went to see a movie, Then I had a dinner at a certain time. Then I had my ritual to go to bed, my ritual to wake up in the morning. I knew exactly what I was going to do. And by the time I got to the game, every single game, I knew I had done everything right to be ready for that game. I wasn't good every game. I wasn't the best skater every game. There's some games I was tired. But if I knew I had to drink 6 bottles of water between 8 a.m. till game time, it was done. All those little things were done. I never played a game people will say, some players will say, I had to hear older players say, man, I wish I would have been a little bit more serious than this and that. And I remember thinking, I'll never say that. I'm going to be ready for every single game and every single one that I play. Like I said, I wasn't good every game. But I know one thing, every single game, I was prepared the best way I could. And I've kind of lived my life like that. Even now on the business side, I'm always like, okay, we got to prepare. We got to have a plan. We got to stick to the plan. And it's not going to be good every day. We're going to have ups and downs, and that's kind of the way we've built our franchise and kind of changed the culture that way.
Most people think that your actual performance starts the minute you walk in the room, but the best of the best do something different. The best of the best know that greatness starts the night before. They get a good night's sleep. They focus on their diet. They focus on the diet the night before, the day of their game. They get there early. The best ones get there first.
Yep.
And they stretch. They meet with the team. They meet with their teammates, their coach, and it's something that I think most people don't do. Certainly, I can't tell you how many people walk into my office and can't tell me the name of my dog. And you may not know the name of my dog, but if you're coming to my office for a meeting and you wanted something from me, I hope you would at least read my website. And it's right there.
That's right.
It's right there. And so and people don't know how to spell the name of one of the companies.
It's funny you say that because there were a time when I started with the Kings, because I didn't really understand the business side of it. I had to learn. And what I did is I hired people way smarter than me. But I remember sitting in the office, and I remember in this 2008 when we were looking to hire a marketing agency to help us. And these guys would come in, and I had kids that were really smart around me, and they were like, well, this agency looks really good. And I remember we had to pick an agency, and there was 5 of them that we met, and 3 of them came in. They had the wrong Kings logo. They had players that weren't playing for our team, on their presentation. And the kids would come out and they go, oh, they're really good. These guys have good number. And I'm like, well, we can't hire them. They're like, why? I go, they didn't even get it. They got the wrong logo. They got 2 players that don't play for us anymore. They play for other teams. You can't. You got to know that. I'm like, I used to play hockey, but I know that enough that you better pay attention to those details. Yep. It's ridiculous. And, I think those guys, because they were right out of college, they're looking at me like, what the hell does he know? But then I know over time, we kept working that way, and we're stickler to the LA King. If you're coming to visit us, you better know who we are.
Yeah.
You know?
I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we jump back in, I want to know if you've ever thought about what you need to do to reach the next level of success in your life. Over the last 25 years, I've been an advisor to more than 50 companies. I've invested nearly 100, including Google, Lyft, and Seagate, and I also co-founded a company that today is worth more than $15 billion. I've been incredibly blessed in my journey, and at this stage in my life, I want to give back. I want to share the lessons I've learned so you can reach incredible success way faster than I did. In my own journey, I've learned that having the right mentor is a massive advantage to achieving our goals. I'm hugely passionate about mentoring others, and I'm looking for a few hungry entrepreneurs who are excited to take action on their journey to incredible future success. So if that's you, I've got an opportunity. In the description of this video, there's a link where you can apply to work with me. All you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and if you're a good fit, my team will reach out so we can build a game plan together. All right, now let's get back to the video.
As you know, I do a ton of coaching. I have interns every summer. I have 36 interns every summer. We have a guest speaker program, and people I coach are kids in college. They have anxiety. They don't really know what they want to do, like my kids have right now. They're seniors in college. And I coach a lot of young professionals, mid-professionals. And what's interesting is, and then I coach some athletes who have retired with just a ton of money. And I ask them to write down what are the things most important to them in their next job.
Yeah.
And we could probably sit here and name them, but one thing that never comes up, ever, is passion. So how important is passion to our success? And what do you say to all the people out there where money is the number one most common answer?
It's funny you say that, because I think it's probably the most important. Like, even to a fault, sometimes we've hired people with the Kings because I knew they were a hockey player, they understood hockey, and they would help us run our business. And if you're passionate about your job, you're gonna want to get better. You're gonna want to, if you do it for money or you're doing it, you probably, unfortunately in the world, very few lucky people do a job that they're passionate about. But if you're like an ex-athlete or someone that's had like a good run, pick something you love so you can be passionate about it. That I tell my kids are in the entertainment business, I go, if you're doing something, you're not looking at the clock, you pick the right job. You know, and that to me, it's everything. You got to be passionate. And my staff with the Kings, they know, like, I'm passionate about the franchise. Like, not perfect, you know, we're going to make mistakes and so forth, but we're going to be passionate about trying to get better every day. I mean, sports is a little bit different. There's the, you know, the mindfulness part of it. We're working on it and everything. It is still a result business. You got to win the games, and you know, you got to fill up the building and so forth. But I would say passion is one of the most important thing on everything you do.
Your name is Lucky Luke, right? I mean, that's your nickname.
Yeah.
And I hear so your name is Lucky Luke. And I hear so many times that people who get successful are lucky. And especially when someone does really well, they're envious, they're jealous. Randy got lucky. Luke got lucky. What do you say to all those people who say people are lucky? And is luck an ingredient of our success?
Well, yeah, like I could give it to you like as a hockey player. Like, yeah, like I was known as a goal scorer and I would get points and so forth, but more known as a goal scorer as my career went on. And then, but sometimes people would say Luke is streaky. Like, he'll go 4 or 5 games, he won't score, and then he'll score 4 or 5 games in a row. And then they would see me, like the 5th game, I would get another goal, and they go, he's so lucky, the puck comes to him. But what they didn't realize is the 4, 5, 6 games that I didn't score, I was at the same place. I did the exact same thing, but the puck bounced the other way. But I kept going. I kept going to the front of the net. You know, I would take a beating in front of the net. I kept going. And next thing you know, by game 7, it hits me in the pad and goes in. I go, he's so lucky, it always hits him. Then the next game, a rebound would lay right on my stick. He's so lucky, but I was always there. I kept doing it over and over again. And that's part of being lucky is, you know, just keep doing something. And same thing with work. You bring your luck by preparation, by coming in, by, you know, outworking other people. Like, you know, there's no secret to it. People show up early. If you show up a little bit earlier, you might get ahead. If you're a little bit more prepared, you'll be better. And the next thing you know, people will say you're lucky, but you kind of know deep inside, it's not luck. And then there's another thing too, is like I tell my kids, I can open doors for them. There's always people that can open doors for you. Same thing with your kid. But once the door is open, it's up to our kids, or it's up to the people who open the door to do what they can with it. You know, my door was, I was a 9th round. It was very slim. I had to push it open, but it still was an open door, and it was up to me to do something with it, and I did.
Of all the elements of success, I think the most important is work ethic and how hard you work. I teach something called philo. If you do philo, you're going to make it no matter where you are. First in, last out. You got to be the first one in that door. Yeah. You got to be the first one in that door and the last one to leave. And I don't care who's there before and who's there later. Yeah. People say, oh, you got to put in FaceTime. That's bullshit. I don't think it's bullshit, because if you're there before anyone, there's always something you can do to add value. Yeah. And there's always something you can do. I mean, people say, oh, I'm done with my work. Well, go do some additional work that no one asked you to do, and go show someone and be proactive and think about, how can I add value to my company or what I'm doing? Yeah. There's
no secret to it. I mean, it's in our world too. It's like, you know, like I look at our GM. It's a 24-hour job. They're always available. You're always thinking, what can I do to get better? And like you're saying, last out, if you like what you do, you're reading about it. You're listening to podcasts. There's so many ways to learn and be better at the job that you like or the passion you like today. Like, kids are really lucky. My son's a musician, and I remember him being a kid learning to play the guitar. I'm like, how'd you learn that song? He goes, I went on YouTube and I picked it up. You know, no one was pushing him to do it. He just did it. So that's a small example of whatever job you want to do. It's so much easier to get better at it today. You don't have to go to the library, literally drive there and read about it. You could go on the internet and get better. So at anything you do now.
Let's talk about being kind and being humble. You've been described as both. You are both. You do very nice things for people. Got my kids Zamboni rides, which is on my bucket list. So I still have not had my Zamboni ride.
We'll get you one.
but maybe one day. You have helped me get Stanley Cup tickets the year you won the game. And by the way, something really funny about that, we go to CPK right across from Staples Center. We're there early, right? I'm waiting for a table, and I'm sitting there, and it clears out. I'm not, okay, whatever. I was talking to my kids or whatever. And I'm looking up, and I'm thinking they're playing an old game. And so there's 3 minutes left in the first period. I realized, holy shit, I miss most of the first period. That was a great moment. But you're known as a down to earth guy. There was a father at our kid's school, had tickets. His son wanted to meet you, and I sent you an email. Can I send your email? Yes, he met you. Lit that kid up. And then in terms of being humble, you're very humble. I mean, you're humble. Tell us about the time that you were 17 years old, you're at a restaurant with your uncle, and he took you into the kitchen, and how that influenced your life.
I think that was an important moment. I mean, I think I grew up in the humble way where my dad was the guy that he would rather have a car that was all beat up but have a big engine. And if, when the guy's lining up to you at the stop sign, they got like a really nice shiny car and they're going, vroom, vroom, and my dad would be with a beat up car and he'd tell me the story, he'd win the race, like it's kind of, so that I think there's that side of me. I always kind of kept that probably, but I think that I remember, that's right. I was 17. I had in my first year in junior, had a good year, and we went to a restaurant, and the manager came out and talked to my uncle and met with the owner of the restaurant, so not the manager. And my uncle says, when you go to a restaurant, every owner, if you have success, if you ever make it in the NHL, they'll want to meet with you. But he says, don't ever forget the person that serves you water. those are the people that are really part of real life. And that stuck with me. I never forgot that. That, though every one of us is lucky to have something. I was fortunate to have a talent, a sense for a game that I love, but every one of us has some type of sense, and few of us get to live our passion, our dream. And I think I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot that part. I never forgot the kid. I waited for this player to get an autograph, and I had a match, like not a box, but like a match thing that you unfold, and it was kind of funny. It was a player from the Montreal Canadiens. His name was Pierre Bouchard. He wasn't even a star, and I waited an hour, and I got to him, and he wrote PB. So years later, I make it to the NHL, funny enough, and we're on TV, and he's interviewing me. He's doing TV, and he was kind of a tough guy for the Canadiens, not a star. And he goes, "Hey, Luc, it's very nice to meet you on TV." And I go, "No, I met you before." He goes, "What?" Because he was a very nice man, too. And I go, "Yeah." I said, "I waited an hour to get your autograph." And I go, "You wrote PB." I go, "What the hell was that?" And you should have seen his face. But I think I never forgot that kid, because I did kept that pack a match for years, just because it was my first NHL player to see, and never forgot that feeling. So for the rest of my career, there was some time I'd be tired. My wife would say, "Look at the kids in the eye. Make sure you make their moment," because you should never forget that when you live your dream, you can make a difference with looking at a kid or saying hi. It's amazing. And then on the other thing, what you're saying about helping people, I think I've always had this philosophy. Like we run a hockey team and we try to not say no. I'm a big fan of the Four Seasons Hotel.
Yeah.
I always do tests. I'll call them in the middle of the night, go, "Can you get this?" They always seem to say, they never say no. I love their culture, their way of being. No matter what, they seem to be better in every hotel in the world. Everybody's happy there. And
they are.
So I try to emulate that with what we do.
You give me a signal back there. I've got like 15 minutes more. Okay. Okay, cool. I mean, you're fine on time, right?
Yeah.
So is it you has a time commitment or on your end? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
So
11:45, I'm out of here. I'm good.
So how important is being kind and humble in our success? Something people don't talk about or don't think about.
I think being humble is very important, but most people, it's very, very rare that I see highly successful people that are not humble. Now, it does happen in the middle range, where some people, it suddenly happened, they're not aware of it. But very successful people, they took a lot of work. They're very busy sometimes. They might be moody and everything, but most of them are humble. I would say the majority of them. And I think it has to do with, like you meet Tom Hanks, one of the most humble person you'll ever meet, and one of the most successful person. That's a great example for me, like to always look up to. I think it's very important, because you should never forget where you come from. No matter what you do, how successful you are, we're all kids. We all had dreams, and you should never, forget that feeling once you made it, whatever, at whatever you're doing.
Guys, I'm going to go back to something that you skipped over, and then we'll continue where we left off before I forget. So you mentioned Pat Burns, who was a coach in the National Hockey League for 14 years, Hall of Fame coach. You played for him in the juniors.
Yeah.
You played for Barry Melrose,
Yep.
Hall of Fame coach. You played for Scotty Bowman for the Red Wings, Hall of Fame coach. As a hockey fan, I always look at the coaches and what they're doing. They sit there, they have no facial expression, they don't do anything, and it seems like the only thing they do is tap guys on the back. How important are coaches in hockey, and what do they actually do, and do they actually make you better players?
Yeah, well, coaches, they're very, very important, because in hockey, unlike other sports, you play every 40 seconds, you go over, and the coach decides who's next. And then a lot of time the coach is looking at the other team, and he's matching, and he's figuring out. And then there's a technique to a coach to make sure you keep everybody involved. There's some guys that play more minutes, some guys that play less minutes, and you got to make sure each of them understand their roles, and that's the most important. The best one I've ever seen at on making sure every player understood their roles within the team concept, even though everybody says, well, Scotty Moman coached the greatest team of all time. That's the hardest thing to do because you got to keep every big ego in line. You got to make sure you make them all feel important. And Scotty was not the best communicator when he coached, but he was the best at the way he handled the bench, we call it, to making you feel that you had a role within the team concept. That I had never seen that. And that's why he won so many Stanley Cups. Now you get another guy like Pat Burns, who just was really scary. I had him in junior, and he was a scary, intimidating man, and he would come in. It wasn't just in fear because he really had fun. When you worked hard and you did it right, he had more fun than any of us. So it was a fun ride to be with him. But when you lost, you were scared to come the next day to practice, and it was hard work and everything. But you got rewarded for doing it right. So every coach is different, but they're really important in hockey. And then also in today's game, now the preparation of knowing like the specialty units, and it's very technical now, and they can fix things quickly because of technology and so forth. So that's changed much. So I think coaches have become even more important.
All right, we're going to move forward now, and we're nearly at the end. You've always been very focused about giving back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about your foundation, how people can help, and what motivated you to give back? And in search of excellence, how important is it to give back?
I think in search of excellence, I think it's important when you live your dream to give back. And then when you're fortunate, if you make a little bit more money than people, or you're doing well, whether sometimes it's financial, you should give back, but sometimes your time too. And for us, my wife and I, when we started Echoes of Hope, it actually started before that when Hurricane Katrina happened.
Yeah.
We had a big house in Utah and near Park City. And I remember we were watching, I think it was CNN, and we both had worked with numerous foundations. We'd worked with, I remember she actually is the one who taught me this. When we met in 1989, I had a billboard in town. It was a Lakers. It might have been, I can't remember if it was James Worthy, and it was a Dodger player, and I couldn't tell you who it was, and it was a Raiders player and myself. We were on a billboard, and it was to help. It was the foundation. It was with the police, and any kids that they could see were on the cusp of joining gangs. They were trying to help them. I can't remember the name of the foundation. And she says to me, she says, oh, you help these kids, you work for, she goes, well, what do you do? And I'm driving, I'm like, oh, by the way, it was a date. I took her by my billboard. No, but like, funny enough, my answer was, well, I took the picture. And she's like, what do you mean you took the picture? She goes, no. We're going to meet these policemen and really help. So she actually helped me meeting kids. We started helping them. And in 1990, 91, we started working with some of those kids. And over the years, some of them have thrived. They have families and everything. We still see some kids once in a while that reappear in our life. But anyway, so move forward. So over the time, we've helped numerous foundations. I was the guy that a lot of people would ask me to do things. I would say yes. And she would participate with me. So anyway, 2005, when Hurricane Katrina happened, we both looked at each other. It was 5 or 6, I can't remember the exact date. And we said, we should do something. So she said, we're going to start a foundation. We're going to help some families. Because remember, we would see all the families they didn't know where to go. So I didn't know it was being a training camp for us. I didn't know she would literally fly to, she didn't fly to, I think she flew to Boca Raton and then drove to New Orleans. And we picked 5 families, and then we relocated them into our home in Utah. And the charity was we were going to help them start a new life. And so over a year, they stayed with us, and then then we got them apartments, and we started a life. But what we saw is a lot of those families weren't well off already, and we saw some of the kids, the teenage kids, they had no drive. They didn't really understand. They weren't well off. So after that, we started getting involved more in Los Angeles and understanding the foster system. So we realized there was a hole, there was a gap where a lot of people give a lot of money for kids, younger kids, but there was that gap when you age out of the system where 63% of those kids end up homeless. And then I think 3% of those kids graduate high school, and then I think 1 or 2% of that 3% end up graduating from college, and they all want to go to college. So our foundation is called Echoes of Hope, and we started with it's not just foster kids anymore. We help any kids that at risk that need help, but you have to graduate high school, and we see you before, and then we make sure you graduate college, and then we keep a lot of them, if they don't have parents, we end up being the parents. So we talk to them. But over the years, we have a group that they're our leadership group. We usually they're down to 60 to 70 kids a year. They come to our house. We do a lot of programming, but they help other kids. But on a year, I think last year we helped over 10,000 kids where it was books, computers, and everything. And we're helping them. Sometimes it's just getting them a cell phone, like helping them in their apartments and so forth. So we get a lot of grants, and it's been very rewarding to meet kids later in life and say, hey, I'm married, I got 2 kids, I got a job, I'm an engineer, or I'm an architect. We have a kid who's a great attorney now. He's got married. Most of those kids tell us they always want to help kids like them. Yeah. So a lot of them work for a nonprofit, and we have one of our first kid, he's running his own nonprofit in Sacramento, working with the government, which is it's very rewarding to see them thrive in their life and help pay it forward to other kids.
Imagine LA is a charity here that takes families in transitional homelessness and takes them out. They keep the kids together, as you know, in the foster care system. They're often split up. The families don't get together. The shelters won't take full families. And I started this event with my friend John Terzian 9 years ago, called the Imagine Ball. We just had it 2 weekends ago, and we've raised $5 million now. My grandmother was raised in foster care. She passed away 1 year ago at 104 years old. So that's a charity near and dear to me, and it's something that is very important to me. Also, we also had a family from Hurricane Katrina. Our rabbi at our temple sent around, hey, if you have extra room or whatever, please let me know. We have a guest home, and the family stayed there for a year. The family was not, the family was actually well off, and that's another story, which we learned 9 months into it, and then they didn't want to leave either, because we kind of have a nice setup at home. So they didn't want to leave. So we're at the end of the show today, and I always conclude the podcast with something I call fill in the blank to excellence. Are you ready to play?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. The biggest lesson I've learned in my life is?
Never give up.
My number one professional goal is?
My family.
My number one, my biggest regret is?
Probably not spending enough time, with my family. I was so driven, but I probably wouldn't have had the success. It's kind of funny. It's a weird saying, but my biggest regret sometimes is probably not spending enough time, with family and that way.
The one thing in my life I'm the most proud of is?
My family.
The one thing in life that I'm the least proud of is?
I don't have anything I'm the least proud of. And that's a hard one. I moved on from bad things so fast, so I have no regrets.
The one thing I've dreamed about doing for a long time but haven't done is?
Climbing a good tough mountain.
Any in particular?
I don't want to do anything crazy. Something a nice 14,000 footer in Colorado somewhere.
If you could go back and give your 21-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't overthink things. I think I got caught up overthinking and worried for no reason. Don't overthink.
If you could meet one person in the world, who would it be?
If I could be one person,
If you could meet one person in the world,
it
who
would have been
be?
Thich Nhat Hanh.
It would have been who?
Thich Nhat Hanh. So he passed away now, but he was such a great speaker, and then you just hear him speak. It's, he's a little bit in the vein of, gosh, I'm forgetting his name right now. From Tibet,
The Dalai Lama?
The Dalai Lama. He's a little bit like that, but even more the way he spoke, it was so peaceful. You just heard him speak, and every time I heard him speak, I was mesmerized, so that would be. Besides that, I've been pretty fortunate to meet everybody I was looking to meet.
The one question you wish I had asked you but didn't is?
Oh. I don't know. I think you hit it all. You did pretty good. None.
Luc, it's been awesome having you as a guest. I know we've been trying to set this up for some time. I'm a huge fan. You're a great guy. You're a great friend. Thanks a lot for being here and continue to do some amazing things for LA, our community. Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Keep it going. This is great.